Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Finance and Strategy and Management Committee this evening. This is the first meeting of the new cycle. The first item on the agenda is election of chair, and from the chair, I'd like to propose Councillor Reisman. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Romans. Do I have any other nominations? No, I don't. Okay, all in favour of Councillor Reisman? That's carried. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Reisman.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for electing me. Item number 2, election of vice chair. So, can I have a proposal for vice chair, please? Councillor Arles.
I'd propose Councillor Romans, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Gavshak. Any other nominations? Okay, I see none. Therefore, put to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Romans as vice chair. Okay, that's carried. Congratulations and thank you, Rob, for agreeing. Apologies for absence. Town Clerk, do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Eggleton.
Item number 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any? Oh, Councillor Hillier.
Yeah, I thought I'd better declare one on item 17 in confidential, but not sufficient to leave the computer for, but just because of the area that it's in. Yeah.
Are there any other? Okay. Item number 5, public participation. Has anyone indicated that they would like to ask a question, Town Clerk?
No, we haven't had any requests.
Okay. Item number 6, minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. That was a long time ago.
We could go to the pub back then.
Okay, can I have any issues of accuracy or kind of proposal for that they be approved?
Yeah, it's a move.
Okay, Councillor Gavshak seconded that. All's in favour of that proposal? Okay, that's carried. Item number 7, finance. To receive the dashboard payments, the management accounts, summary of SIL expenditure, investment performance updates, bank reconciliations, and summary of payments. Does anyone want to take any of these separately?
I'll just make the point, given where we've got to with a minus 54 deficit, that we need to seriously think about where we can look to improve the picture. And I hope in the course of this meeting we'll have a discussion about areas perhaps where we can make improvements and other areas where we can't.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that that the final figure for this financial year is going to be a long way negative of the original budget for the obvious reasons that that we're going to have to take considerable actions to deal with the crisis. We're already hit by various costs, additional costs, and yes, that is going to be a factor that's going to affect us for perhaps longer than just this financial year.
But we weren't in the best position before the crisis. That's the point I was making.
Well, it was fortunate that we raised the council tax then, wasn't it?
Well, I think you raised the precept, but there we go.
The kind of proposal then that we accept these en bloc then in item 7, Councillor Gavshak. Yes, thank you. Councillor Miller, you seconded that. Everyone in favour of that proposal, please vote. Okay, thank you. Item number 8, expenditure. So this is to approve the extra costs for the Northfield End Triangle, which are, I think, starting to near completion. So some additional sleepers were needed. Town Clerk, have you got anything to add to this?
Not really. The project has been completed now. The question was, when they were undertaking the work, they realised that in excavating the footpath, it left an area between the footpath and the adjacent triangular green, where there wasn't any barrier at all. So it was the two options were to leave it as was, or to finish it off completely with another line of sleepers to match those already there. Now the costs for this was taken from a capital fund, which obviously only a committee can approve. So it was agreed at the time, in consultation with various officers and members, that it was best to get this done properly. And at the time, the expenditure was put towards a general maintenance budget. However, £10,000 was put aside for the project work, of which only about 8,600 or so was spent. So what we are requesting is that the remainder of the capital pot put aside for this is used up to reduce the amount that we're spending from the management budget, from the maintenance budget. Apologies.
Okay, so is it proposed, do you suggest, Town Clerk, that we resolve this item under our delegated powers?
Yes, that the committee resolve under its delegated powers to via £1,255 from the planned maintenance budget under recreation amenities to the earmarked funds for the Northfield End Triangle.
Councillor Gavishak.
I'd like to propose that motion, and if it's seconded, I'd like to speak for a short amount of time.
Do you have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Hinton, thank you. Councillor Gavishak.
Right. Well, this is the culmination of a magnificent project, and I remember with actually Councillor Akehurst and other councillor who I've forgotten, which is really embarrassing, going to for 4 days of inquiry on this. Clenshaw, that's right. Sorry, David Clenshaw. I apologise to David if he's listening. A 4-day hearing, 3 of which were over at Cromarsh in the old SODC council buildings, and 1 in Henley Town Hall as well. And it was a magnificent battle or a fight to stop this particular area becoming private property. The property developer had sold off parking places at £40,000 a time, and Henley Town Council took the principled position that they would fight the stopping up order, and we were successful, and it was absolutely wonderful. And it's great to see, and I've been down there and looked at it, and it's a magnificent job, well done in terms of the works, and it looks really, really good. So it's a great proposal, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hillier.
Just a small comment. I think that we should remember there were members of the public that lost a lot of money through that, that, you know, had paid the developer for their parking spaces in good faith and lost out. So it wasn't quite so joyous all round. That's what I'd like to comment.
Well, that although they had agreed to pay £40,000 for those, or sums around £40,000.
Yeah.
The contract, obviously, once the stopping up order was refused, that money couldn't be paid to the developer. The developer never made the money. So, so what we did was we not only protected the interests of those residents. Those who paid got their, or who not wanted to pay, got their money back, and those who were concerned about the safety aspects of multiple slot 11 parking spaces driving across the pavement in front of front doors, we protected the interests of those residents, which was a prime consideration. And as Councillor Gavishak has said, restoring this heritage area to an attractive place and retaining the 4 parking spaces means that we've combined both the appearance and the functionality and the safety of that space, and I think it's a long-standing interest of mine, as I think most people know, and I'm particularly pleased to see this final chapter in the story drawn to a close with a happy ending. Okay, so does anyone else want to speak, or shall we move to the vote?
I'll just sum up.
I think Councillor Hamilton just wants to speak. I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Governshire.
Yeah, I'm pleased that Councillor Hillier has spoken on this, because it wasn't perhaps joyous for everyone. I just wondered, it's a relatively small amount of money we're going to bar across. I'm quite happy to do that. But I just wonder whether there's been any local contributions, or would be considered local contributions from the developer or the those that wanted parking spaces there. Is there an opportunity to perhaps get a contribution from local residents in the area?
Well, I can answer that, or do you want to, Councillor Governshire?
I
mean, the answer is that they're now residents parking. So the residents who pay for a parking permit are able to pay and park in those slots in the same way as other residents parking works in the town. The residents have also helped and contributed to improving that. Under the town council and the residents of Northfield End have been working together to improve the area, and that has helped to overcome the rundown nature as occurred under the developer, who was interested only in turning it into parking places rather than retaining it as an attractive heritage area of the town. So yes, the residents are involved, and the residents are grateful, and those who wish to park there have to pay. Councillor Governshire, do you want to exercise your right to apply?
I'll just sum up. I disagree with Councillor Hillier and Councillor Hamilton. This was a public asset that a private developer was selling, and it was absolutely right that we, as the town council, protect public property, especially if it's property. The outcome of this is that we actually have gained the triangle of land down there that we can actually look after and maintain in perpetuity for the town of Henley. So therefore it was a public asset that was maintained, and we now have it in the control of the Henley Town Council for all times, and it looks lovely down there. And the thing about the private people who actually bought the car parking spaces, their beef is with the developer, because it was the developer that sold the parcels of land, which he didn't know. So therefore their beef is not with the town council, it's with the developer. Thank you.
Okay, so let's vote on the proposal to wire across the money. All those in favour of that proposal? Okay, thank you. Item number 9, to review the policies. First of all, the grants and free use policy. Town Clerk, would you like to talk to this briefly?
Thank you, Chairman. I've done a cover report for for this policy. The main issue that I saw here is that we have 4 related schemes. There's free use for festivals, a community grants scheme, and a larger grant scheme. These are all 4 separate schemes with 4 separate terms and conditions, 4 separate application forms, and so because of how they've developed over time, there's a lot of inconsistency and confusion in how people apply for them and how they're determined. There were also concerns raised by the town hall team around free use, and they wanted some clarity around the use by free use organisations for that. So this policy looks to consolidating all of the current grant schemes into one. So there is one simple application form for any application, but the process is streamlined. With the large applications, it's recommended that we consider them in December. The reason being is when we're putting together the budget, we will start around September, October. It will go to the committees and then it will come to this committee in December before it goes to full council. By considering the larger grants in September, it means that they are considered without the context of the forthcoming year's budget. This way, they can be considered in that context of the larger budget. So when we're seeing how much of a surplus or deficit we're going to have, will also be the time when we'll be determining those larger grants as well. It clears up the eligibility criteria for the grants, and it just generally simplifies and makes the process much easier for people to understand, much more straightforward. I won't say any more about it. It's all down there in the report, unless any councillors have questions.
I think it's an excellent, as you say, a simplification and streamlining and clarification of the number of existing policies. And thank you, Town Clerk, for assembling this. Can I proposal for the to adopt these? Councillor Plant, Councillor Roman seconded. Anyone else like to speak to this? Is that you? You want to speak, Councillor Arlott?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could I just ask under 4.1.2b, where does Councillor Hillier fit into that?
4.1.2b. This is a very interesting point. So there has been a bit of debate back and forth. Most room use policies from principal councils say that their facilities can only be used by councillors acting in their role for the council. It cannot be used for any other political purposes. Here we don't say that at the moment, and political groups can. The reason for including this, my thoughts behind it, were that it is right and proper that political groups representing the town council should be able to use town council facilities to meet to discuss town council business, and they should be able to do that. Obviously, Lorraine is in as an independent Conservative is in a unique position at present. But what it would do is it would prevent other political groups from being subsidised by the council to undertake political activities, because free use is being subsidised. We offset whatever room use there is. We offset that with basically a grant to the town hall to balance it out. So here it was basically saying those political meetings, which may or may not be in alignment with the aims and objectives of the council, it would basically remove that possibility and just say the council is not going to be funding political activity. And there is I cannot put my finger on the legal reference, but there is a legal I can't think of the word now. It's far too late. The council, it is illegal for the council to fund marketing of political parties. Now, whether or not use of the rooms, it would be classed as marketing. If it's giving a voice to political parties, it could possibly be. So this way, it means that the council would not be funding any political parties. So that's the reason behind it.
Councillor, does that answer?
Yeah, I probably should have read all this before in detail. Just moving on to H on 4.1.2 on H. is it wise to put a figure on that? Organisations that have a disproportionately high level of uncommitted reserves.
As we deal with so many different local organisations, each will have its own set of governance and own amount of reserves that would be deemed acceptable for it. Then it would be difficult to put a figure on that we could stand by. All this means is that when the council is considering those free use applications, it will look at their reserves and say, look, actually, are they pretty well off? Can they actually afford to be paying for this, rather than the taxpayer subsidising their use of it?
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps it's worth clarifying that 4.1.2 is about funding or providing free use. So when we decide whether or not to respond to an application by agreeing to funding it, we nearly always look at the financial account. Well, we have to look at the financial accounts of the organisation, and we look to see how much money they have. If they're a well-off organisation with plenty of liquid funds, then we tend to take the view that they're less in need than those that don't have such funds. And I think that's a natural thing to do. And providing a number there would be wouldn't be helpful.
Okay.
And going back to 4.1.2b, it doesn't mean that political groups can't book a town hall room and pay for it. They're perfectly entitled to do that. It's a matter of whether we provide the free use. Remember, this is the grants policy. It's whether or not we fund such or such political activity that's being considered here. Councillor Hamilton, you're in mute, Will.
I'd just like to ask the town clerk's advice on this. Christmas arrangements usually mean that whatever political party, there is a Christmas party of some kind in some room. Now, one political party has obviously got free use of the mayor's parlour, which the other party doesn't have. And we need to be balanced to every political party, whether it's Councillor Hillier, myself, or any of the other councillors. So how would you envisage that we deal with the Christmas arrangements, given that one political party obviously has full use of the mayor's parlour for free?
That's
Well,
untrue. Only the mayor does, not the whole party. Only the mayor has use of the mayor's parlour.
Town clerk, do you want to thank you, Councillor?
Yes, it's along the lines that Councillor Hinton says. The use of the mayor's parlour, it is a very, very generous benefit of being the mayor, and the use of the mayor's parlour is within reason at the discretion of the mayor. Obviously, a number of functions are held there, and for different groups, and it is at the mayor's discretion. However, that does not mean that other political groups. What we're saying here is that other political groups can have free use of meeting rooms where it is discussing town council business. As for social functions, whether or not the town council should be necessarily subsidising that is different. Obviously, we don't intend to rent out the mayor's parlour, and therefore we aren't subsidising any activities in that room, because we would not be gaining any income from that room anyway.
I think that was clear. Okay, we have a proposal and a seconder to adopt this policy. Can't remember who proposed it now. Did I want to exercise the right to reply? I can't remember. Obviously not, seeing as I was putting that down. Okay, let's vote on the proposal that we adopt this policy. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. And the second part of 9 is the to review and approve the revised reserves policy and level of reserves. I don't know who wants to explain this. Do you, town clerk, or the accountant?
As we have our accountant Liz Jones here, I would be happy for her to speak to it, but I'm also happy to answer any questions. There is one specific thing where there has been a bit of back and forth, and I think probably slight disagreement between myself and our internal auditor. The internal auditor is of the opinion that total reserves should not exceed a certain threshold. I'm trying to see in the report where that threshold is. However, my understanding is that it is general reserves, so uncommitted reserves, that should not exceed a certain threshold. The idea being that the council should not be accumulating money for money's sake, that it should only have up to about a year's worth of budget basically in the bank, and it doesn't really need more than that. However, there is nothing to stop the council holding any amount of capital earmarked or ring-fence funds. And this particularly applies to capital reserves. Where we get receipts from capital disposals, then those receipts can only be used for capital expenditure. That means that we cannot use it to prop up the budget. We can't use it to reduce the deficit, at least not directly. So even if we hold 10, 20, 30 million in capital reserves, because that is ring-fenced for capital expenditure, then that doesn't count towards the limit. And similarly with money that we hold for SIL expenditure, which can only be used for community infrastructure, and similarly for earmarked reserves, where we have said over the next 5 years we need to invest, say, 100,000 in our moorings, then because we have earmarked that fund for, because there is a purpose, it has been committed, then again that does not count towards that limit. Is only the general fund, and so that's a point of clarification that I wanted to mention.
It's always been my understanding that the general reserves, which essentially comprise the accumulated surplus of previous years, is the amount that we should keep under control as part of our reserves policy, and
exactly right.
And that just doesn't apply to capital reserves, which are a different thing. So I'm surprised at the internal auditor's view on this. Liz, I think were you going to sort of summarise what the do you have anything more to say on the on your report?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. No, I think that sort of goes into the difference between the sort of earmarked and capital reserves and the general reserves. The reason that we have general reserves, certainly up to this point, of around about £1 million is explained under point 3.6. So there are sort of 3 bullet points explaining kind of why we feel we should have reserves at this level. And I think the coronavirus crisis has kind of demonstrated that actually it's a really good thing we do have these sort of levels. So that, those points there kind of explain the roughly £1 million that we have as a general reserve. I mean, if councillors have got any questions on any of those points, otherwise I think hopefully it's all fairly self-explanatory.
Yes, it's a very good report. Thank you, Liz. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, sorry, it's just one question on the capital expenditure commitments brought forward on page 52.
Yeah.
The third one down, the new website for the town council. I could have sworn it was 3,000 for that. Have I don't.
It was. Originally it was 3, and then it was increased by a further 5,000 during 2019-20 to make it a total of 8, because it was felt that 3 wasn't going to be enough for an entire new website.
No, I agree. I just don't remember that. Okay.
So it is 8 now, as at the end of March.
Okay.
Councillor Governor.
Well, I would like to make the proposals on page 51 at the bottom. Recommendations 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3. I so propose.
Seconder for that?
Can I,
Councillor Rowlands.
could I just make one tiny adjustment to when we're doing 4.3, that the revised reserves policy is approved, subject to just one very minor alteration, which is at point 4.6.5. And I'm sorry that the numbering, I've got two 4.6s, so I'll change that for the final version. So for the very last line on page 5 out of 6, the UCCR balance, which is the capital receipts balance, should be reviewed at each year end, but to eliminate the words for justification and reasonableness, because we don't really need to justify that, as we've just gone through that the capital reserves are fine. We don't need to justify them. We're justifying the general reserves balance. So just to take off the words for justification and reasonableness.
Okay, I'm happy to propose that.
I
Do you have a
was-
seconder for that amendment?
And I'll sort out the numbering.
Yeah. Okay. So, so yes, that with that amendment, as you can see, the rest of the 4.6 monitoring of viewing reserves covers all the other aspects. Okay, so we have a proposal and a seconder to when I get to the page, which I've lost.
51.
So 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3 but with the minor amendments that that Liz has brought to our attention. All those in favour of that proposal? Okay, thank you. Ethical investment strategy. This isn't the first time that this committee has considered ethical investments, and it's something that that is clearly much more mainstream nowadays in regards to investment managers. And when we raised this with them recently, they already had policies or emerging policies on that. And so there's a report here from Liz on the meeting that we held, which must have been quite a while ago now. I think it was in February, where we met with them and we discussed the various options that we have in order to ensure we have an ethical investment policy. And there are recommendations as part of that. If I can find it. So there are recommendations in set out to point 3.8.
I think it's 3.9, Chairman.
Yeah, page 61.
So, yeah. So in 3.9, there are a number of recommendations which A, B, C, and D and E, and the proposal is that we adopt those. One thing for those who attended the meeting, I can't remember who did now. We have the actual figure that we have chosen to use in 3.9.B is an ESG score of 20 to 30, and we were hoping to get that down to 20 to 25. However, at this point, one of the investment managers doesn't feel able to do that, but that still represents an improvement, and we've set a marker, and maybe at some point we can look at as investment strategies continue to evolve and emerge. Perhaps we can review that with them in the future, but for now we're recommending an ESG score of 20 to 30 amongst other things. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I attended that meeting and I thought it was a very good meeting. I'm quite happy to go with the proposal as in 4.1, and the only one I wasn't happy with is tobacco, and I think we should, we haven't given the investment managers a timeline on this, and I think we should within the next 12 months look to, it's only a very, very small part of our portfolio with one of the investment managers, but I think we should look to remove tobacco from our investment portfolio, in my view. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
happy to propose
completely agree.
4.1 with an amendment that within 12 months, so to give the investment managers time, if they could look to move that investment on. It's a very, very small point.
But it's that's D, is that not point D, Chairman?
No, it's specifically for tobacco.
Well,
tobacco's mentioned.
The recommendation is to work towards zero holdings, including in the various industries, including tobacco. So I think your proposal is in line with that. I mean, I completely sympathise, but I don't think we can set a date to make that decision. I think that we should set a date. We should indicate that we should discuss with them how we can get that down to zero, and whether we should push to do it within 12 months if possible.
Yeah, at least it gives them a guide.
Yeah, well, I think the guide here is very clear. So exclusion from direct investments in certain industries, including tobacco, and work towards zero holdings. So I think the proposal there carries exactly the meaning that you want to see, which I do too. Okay.
You can second my proposal then, Mr. Chairman.
I'm happy to second it, yes. So I think it's an excellent report, and I'm delighted that the majority of the councillors, which I hope to see in a moment, support this enlightened view. Councillor Gabishak.
Sorry, could I just ask for clarification? Are we voting for the proposal in the paper, or with the amendment that Councillor Hamilton proposed about the year, or are we just saying work towards exclusion, which I think is perfectly reasonable?
I think I have persuaded Councillor Hamilton that the wording in 3.9D is consistent with the wording that he expressed, which is that we push to do it within 12 months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put into within the next 12 months. The recommendation to approve the adjustments set out within the next 12 months, which is, it just gives them a timeline to work to.
Well, we meet with the investment manager every 6 months, and
right.
So all we need to do is to bring it up as part of that review beforehand, and say, are we now in a position to exclude or reduce to zero the holdings in those industries?
Okay.
I mean, so I think rather than force our hand now, I think we should make a very clear position, which you've done, which is that we should work to zero holding as soon as possible. And I think that's a sensible approach. Who had their hand up?
You've got Councillor Hinton, Chairman.
Councillor Hinton.
Yeah, obviously I completely support this, but I just wanted to point out that proposing 4.1 still says 3.8, and it's the recommendations in 3.9. So just make sure it was minuted.
That's right.
correctly.
Yeah. Yes, it's 3.9 A, B, C, D, and E that we are.
Yeah.
The proposal.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything on this? Okay. Right. All those in favour of the proposal. Right. And I think I win a bet with Hillary. She said I'd never get it through council a few years ago. Oh, I shall be telling her. Okay. Item number 11, risk assessment. To review and approve the council's strategic risk assessment, 63 to 70. And this is another of the new town. Well, I'm calling the new town clerk. The town clerk's extensive rewrite of our policies. And I must say, I think this is an excellent report, which again improves and clarifies our risk assessment in many ways. Town Clerk, would you like to say anything, or does the report stand on its own?
Thank you very much. It's yes, the policy kind of stands on its own. There are a couple of amendments that I would minor amendments that I would like to make to it that I can come on to after anybody has asked any questions that they may have. But yes, the idea with this is it's the risk assessment itself is broadly as it has been previously. What I've done is I've added to it, giving more about the reason why we have the risk assessment, the legal framework behind it, and what we look to achieve with it. But yes, I'm happy to come on to the amendments once any questions have been asked.
I suggest you go ahead with the proposed amendments now, Town Clerk.
If looking under the assessment itself, which starts from page 66, you'll notice the second column says risk level, where it says medium, low or high. Now the council has previously, on the previous page, 65, there is a risk assessment matrix. And it has, underneath where it says medium, low or high, it has said, it has put a figure for the likelihood and impact. So for example, a medium might be a 2 for likelihood and a 2 for impact. So all I'd do is under risk assessment, put those scores for likelihood and impact, just to make that a bit clearer. The other amendments I'd like to suggest is there is a duplication under section 4. The libel and slander section should be removed because it is addressed earlier on in the risk assessment. Also under libel and slander, I'd like to just add in a little bit about qualified privilege under their awareness of qualified privilege, which kind of goes alongside code of conduct. There's also under the first section about over-reliance on key staff. I'd like to suggest that I also add in something about succession planning there. And under 2 items below that, lack of ownership of tasks, I'd like to add in a regular review of documented processes. Those are the only amendments I'd like to suggest.
Okay, thank you, Town Clerk. So, does anyone else wish to make any comments? Or I don't think
is it worth bringing back those amendments for full council? Because there's a number of them, and approving this at full council.
We can either recommend. I'm fine that this becomes a resolve to recommend item, and that the Town Clerk can reissue the risk assessment as amended. Are you okay with that, Town Clerk?
I'm happy with that.
Yes, I'd be happy with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
As the amendments are relatively minor in detail.
They are, yes. But I just say I have no objection to it. It is a legal requirement we do this, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we make a recommendation to.
Councillor Plant wants to speak.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Plant.
I was just going to say, given the hard work that's already gone into it and the fact the amendments are relatively minor, is it really worthwhile taking that step? Can't we agree them now rather than doing it? It just seems to be going through it again. And the latter point there, very minor. There's a lot of hard work already gone into it, so I'd rather just see it accepted now and moved on.
Councillor Gavshak.
I agree with Councillor Plant. I mean, they're minor amendments. It's an excellent report. Presumably, at some time in the future, the report can be come back to if it needs further clarification. But
it will have to.
I think the idea is let's get on with it and do it now.
Okay, so the suggestion is, the proposal is that we resolve this under our delegated powers. This risk assessment. So who proposed that? Was that?
I'll propose that we, with the amendments that the Town Clerk has said, we accept this report.
Yeah.
Sorry, isn't this something that full council has to approve?
Yeah.
Town Clerk, can you help me out here?
No, it is something that can be delegated to committee.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the proposal is that we resolve to adopt the risk assessment as amended by the Town Clerk earlier. All those in favour of that proposal? Okay, thank you. Annual return, financial statements and internal audit report. Which of you, Town Clerk Liz, would like to introduce this? I think you did a fair proportion of the work. Liz, would you like to introduce it? This is again an important legal requirement, and this does have to be approved by full council.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so this will only be resolving to recommend. So there are a few documents attached here. The first one is the AGAR, which stands for the Annual Governance and Accountability Return. It used to be just called the Annual Return. And it's the documents that has various sort of boxes and things that need completing in it. So we've had the internal audit done, that's been completed, and later on under this same agenda item, there's the internal auditor's report showing that there were no sort of points that we need to get back to him on. He's quite happy. And there's a page 5 of 6 of the AGAR. It's called section 2 accounting statements, which has some figures in it, and I had attached to the agenda item where those figures have come from. And section 1 is the annual governance statement, and councillors need to satisfy themselves that all the ticks in the yes boxes of that page, which is page 4 of 6, that they're happy with all those ticks. So as far as the figures are concerned, so the details are attached to the report here, and the other main document is the full set of accounts that are not audited. So they're full unaudited financial statements, but they give a lot more detail, and I think they give a lot more useful information really on where the council is at the moment, what it's been doing in the year, what it's going to be doing next year, where some of the details in the figures come from. The figures are as per the management accounts that councillors saw at the last meeting. I think you saw the draft, you saw the management accounts up to the end of March. There's one figure I'm still waiting for, which is the value of our investment properties, and our investment properties are 36 Marketplace, where we have a residential tenant, and some shares of equity in a couple of properties in Lever Road. So we just need to get those market valued, and I've got an estate agent coming back to me in the next couple of days. I suspect they might have gone down in value, but I won't know until we hear from him. So I mean, the accounts are the full accounts are sort of similar to the thing if you were in business and you had accounts prepared by your accountant and audited. They're in that sort of same formula. Being an accountant in practice for many years, that's it all means a lot more to me. The AGAR figures incorporate those receipts and payments. They also have to include capital receipts and payments, and movements on the various reserves and things. So they're sort of slightly more complicated to fish out and put down onto this little tiny form here, but I have explained where the figures have come from in the supporting documents. Does anyone have questions?
So are we happy to take all the recommendations in section 4 of the report together? Councillor Plant? Yeah, okay. So kind of a seconder for that proposal. That's Councillor Roman. So the recommendations do need to be qualified by, as Liz said, with the 2 minor updates that will be needed for full council to approve. But so subject to those 2 qualifications, we recommend the recommendation of this committee is to the full council should approve those. And I'd like to thank the accountant for drawing up the unaudited accounts, particularly the part which ought to be the most interesting, really, is that what we've done over the last 12 months on page 84 and on page 85, what we plan to do as we look ahead, which of course might have been somewhat overtaken by events. But it is remarkable that there's a large number of achievements that this council has made in the 2019-20 year, and there's plenty more than those that are on page 4. They do take up 2/3 of that page, and thank you to the accountant for drawing those up. Okay, can we vote on that proposal then? That we, as in item 4 of the report, all those in favour of that, adopting all the, recommending that we adopt all those. Okay, thank you. Item number 13. So now to consider that the public and press be excluded from the remainder of the meeting in accordance with the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960. Publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business. So I so move. Do I have a seconder for that? All those in favour of that proposal?